you can understand even more so why he would want to step away and not focus on fighting or defending his title, because obviously there's a lot going on. It's extremely sad.
The news of his exit might...
The MMA universe just got turned completely upside down. Ilia Topuria, the guy who was sitting pretty as an undefeated champion across 2 divisions, just made the call to step back from defending his UFC lightweight belt.
Some news regarding Ilia Topuria, because I do think that as of this morning, it's probably the biggest news of the day. So obviously by now you know that he is not fighting on January 24th.
This isn't your typical fighter taking a break story. What's really driving this decision will absolutely break your heart. Let me walk you through what's happening right now.
So over the past several weeks, I've made the difficult decision to temporarily step away from defending my title. This was not a decision I took lightly. However, when circumstances arise that threaten your personal integrity, your family, and your reputation, there comes a point when you must address them directly. In recent months, I have been subjected to severe and unacceptable pressure, including threats to disseminate false allegations of domestic abuse unless financial demands were met. These allegations are entirely unfounded. The truth is not a matter of opinion, it is a matter of evidence.
Nobody could have predicted this bombshell. What I'm laying out for you today represents one of the most earth-shattering developments in mixed martial arts history. We're watching a reigning champion's world crumble in real time, and it's unlike anything the UFC has witnessed before. Before we get into the complete mayhem that's currently happening, I need to rewind to when everything started falling apart. What began as quiet speculation has blown up into the most jaw-dropping saga in recent UFC memory. This story is dominating every MMA conversation right now, and even Ariel Helwani admitted this is the biggest thing happening in the sport.
So that is heavy-duty stuff. Obviously, we knew that he was going through some personal issues, and there's rumors online, and I didn't want to partake in any of those. I had not heard any of this. I had not heard any of these allegations or rumors, innuendo, any of that. And so you can understand even more so why he would want to step away and not focus on fighting or defending his title, because obviously there's a lot going on. It's extremely sad. It's, I feel for everyone involved. I feel for his family. I feel for his kids. It's an awful situation.
November 27th, 2025 changed everything when Topuria hit social media with a statement that instantly rocked the entire MMA world. That first post from Topuria was direct and devastating. I'm sitting out the first quarter of next year. My personal life is in chaos right now. My focus has to be on my kids and getting this mess sorted out as fast as possible. Back then, nobody understood how deep this situation actually went. The MMA community started guessing, and the theories were flying everywhere. Maybe it was championship pressure finally getting to him. Others figured it had to be money issues with the UFC, but what we eventually learned was way more devastating than anyone imagined. His fellow fighters immediately stepped up with support. Max Holloway, the same guy Topuria had brutally finished during his featherweight dominance, posted publicly saying, "Hate to see this champ. If this is what I think it is, I've been through that hell trying to keep your children safe. Wishing you the best." Holloway's words were revealing. That phrase about keeping your children safe suggested something much darker than a simple break from training or dealing with injuries. Then December 15th, 2025 arrived, and everything exploded. Ilia Topuria dropped a statement that would reveal the real story behind his absence. Ariel Helwani went through the complete statement on his show, and you need to hear exactly what Topuria revealed.
My initial decision to remain silent was made solely to protect my children, who are the most important part of my life. However, I've come to understand that silence under these circumstances does not protect the truth. It allows false narratives to take hold. Many individuals have faced similar situations, and time and again, the legal system has ultimately clarified the facts. Today, I'm stepping forward not only for my family and myself, but also to demonstrate that no one should be forced to yield to intimidation.
Here's what makes Topuria's claims so incredibly serious. Because understanding this is absolutely essential to grasping how massive this situation really is. Topuria's official statement alleges he's been targeted in an extortion plot. Someone allegedly threatened to spread fake domestic abuse accusations against him unless he paid massive amounts of money. This bombshell lines up perfectly with Topuria's messy separation and custody fight with his ex-wife Georgina Euskotagay Bedell, who's the mother of his young daughter born in. Sources confirm their relationship imploded in late 2025, with social media unfollows, deleted couple photos, and what Spanish outlets describe as a brutal divorce battle over major assets and child custody rights. Once you grasp everything Topuria is battling right now, his decision to walk away from fighting makes perfect sense. Helwani captured just how serious this whole situation really is.
Well, I got something for you. This is called the Wife Beater Special. That's right. I got my wife beater on for Ilia Topuria. That puts his hands on a woman. You know, I grew up without a dad. You know, never seen my dad, never will see my dad. And you know what? I'd rather not see my dad than have my dad there beating on my mom. Let me tell you something, that'll get you killed around these parts, son.
Reports show the couple's split started becoming obvious around October 6, 2025, when both Topuria and Georgina wiped their joint photos from Instagram. Just 7 days later, Georgina shared a loaded message on her Instagram. A mother's real strength isn't staying alert to threats. It's creating a world where her daughter grows up fearless, liberated, and confident. By November 10th, news broke that Georgina had initiated divorce proceedings, reportedly going after half Topuria's wealth. 2 days following that, cheating accusations emerged. Georgina allegedly told Spanish press that their relationship ended because Topuria was contacting other women. But the story gets even messier from here. Topuria's December 15th statement revealed he's been actively building a defense case. He claimed that comprehensive evidence has been systematically collected and preserved, including recorded conversations, written messages, witness testimony, and video footage. This evidence, according to him, has already been presented to Spanish legal authorities to pursue criminal charges for attempted extortion, evidence tampering, theft of personal assets, and multiple intimidation attempts. Topuria's statement also broke down why he originally decided to keep quiet about this nightmare, and what finally pushed him to go public.
I think a lot of people were surprised that you were not fighting in the first quarter, at least. But how is it with the UFC? Are they understanding? Because obviously all the fighters can go through problems such as what you are going through. How understanding was Hunter and the other people involved? The truth is, Ilia says they have been excellent. We have a special connection. I have understanding without having to give a lot of explanation, understanding from them. From the very first moment they have extended their hand. I have been offered their support in any time I needed it. So I don't really know. I'm very happy for the support I've received from them, for the understanding.
The MMA world's response to this revelation has been immediate and polarized. Some fighters and fans are backing Topuria completely, seeing him as someone fighting against blackmail and manipulation. Others are questioning everything, wondering if the timing during divorce proceedings is just too convenient. Bryce Mitchell didn't hesitate even 1 second before picking sides and going nuclear on Topuria's ex-wife.
You do wonder, at some point, will they decide to make that interim belt the actual belt if he's not going to come back anytime soon? I don't think that they're going to be forced to do that for the January event. We'll see what kind of timeline he's on, how long this is going to play out. But if it's by next summer, perhaps they make that call.
The timeline here?
Mitchell even escalated things by challenging Topuria's brother, Alejandro Topuria, to an actual fight, claiming he dropped down to bantamweight to face him in the octagon. But while fighters like Bryce Mitchell are busy throwing accusations around on social media, the UFC has fights to book and a lightweight division that's now completely scrambled. So, what's the promotion's game plan for handling this unprecedented mess?
So basically, Topuria says, I'm going to spoil the UFC's plans, which Justin Gaethje has acknowledged the fact the UFC clearly wants Topuria versus Paddy. And Topuria basically says, I'm probably not fighting Justin Gaethje if he wins. Look at that. If Justin Gaethje wins, the subtitles are kind of covered up here, the UFC has different plans. Watch that again. I know most of you don't speak Spanish. But if Justin Gaethje wins, the UFC has different plans.
The UFC has actually handled this crisis with what Topuria describes as incredible understanding and support. When questioned about how the organization was treating him during this nightmare, Topuria couldn't say enough good things about Hunter Campbell and the entire UFC leadership team.
Did he vacate the belt, or did you guys say, if you're moving to lightweight, then we don't want to hold up the featherweight division?
No, he did that. He said, I've done everything I can do here. I'm ready to move up. And he vacated it. He said, I shouldn't be holding up anybody's opportunities. And, it's always I respect when guys do that.
But here's the massive question that every single person in the MMA world is demanding an answer to. What's going to happen to the lightweight belt while Topuria deals with this personal and legal nightmare? The UFC's answer came fast and decisive. They announced an interim lightweight championship fight between Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett at UFC 34-24, set for January 24, 2026, at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. This booking has completely shaken up the division and created massive controversy among fighters and fans everywhere. Let me explain exactly why this matchup has everyone so heated up. Justin Gaethje is a 37-year-old warrior with a 25-5 professional record. He's a former interim lightweight champion who earned that belt in 2020 against Tony Ferguson before getting submitted by Khabib Nurmagomedov in the unification bout. Famous for his aggressive fan-pleasing approach that focuses on knockout power and incredible Turkness, Gaethje has delivered some of the most exciting battles in recent UFC memory. Across from him, Paddy Pimblett is a 30-year-old fighter from Liverpool sitting at 21-3, staying perfect in the UFC with 6 straight wins. His entertaining personality mixed with solid grappling and developing striking has turned him into one of the most divisive personalities in the sport. But here's what's got everyone absolutely furious. Arman Tsarukyan, the clear #1 contender with dominating performances including over Charles Oliveira, plus a recent submission of Dan Hooker, got completely ignored for this interim title opportunity, and he's letting everyone know how pissed off he is about it. Tsarukyan has been blasting the decision publicly, insisting that this interim fight was planned specifically to build up Pimblett for a revenge fight with Topuria. He went on record saying, "They're trying to manufacture a star in Paddy Pimblett. They understand I can beat everyone in this division." Here's where it gets even more complex. Pimblett has been suggesting that Topuria might get stripped of the title completely if his absence stretches into summer 20. Helwani discussed this exact scenario, breaking down when the UFC might be forced to make that decision.
Topuria has felt like he's done all that he can in that division, and he feels like he's cemented his legacy, and his body cannot make the weight anymore. So Topuria will be moving up to 155 pounds and will be vacating the featherweight title.
The timeline here is absolutely critical to understand. Topuria's most recent fight was his title-winning performance against Charles Oliveira at UFC 317 in June 2025, which means a summer 2026 return would represent approximately 1 full year away from competition. Based on UFC's unofficial policies, champions are generally expected to defend their belts at least once every 12-18 months, or face getting stripped. But what's even more intriguing is what Topuria has suggested about his future intentions. Sources indicate that Topuria has hinted that if Gaethje captures the interim belt, he might actually give up his title voluntarily and chase a welterweight showdown against Islam Makhachev instead, and unifying the lightweight titles. One YouTube analyst explained exactly what Topuria supposedly said about the UFC having alternative plans if Gaethje wins. This information has convinced many people that Topuria's real interest is fighting Pimblett, not necessarily the most qualified challenger. The bad blood between Topuria and Pimblett goes back to their heated confrontation at UFC 317, where Topuria shoved Pimblett during an in-cage incident after knocking out Oliveira. Now let me give you the historical precedent for how the UFC normally manages these scenarios. When Conor McGregor became the first fighter to hold 2 titles simultaneously in November 2016, he got stripped of his featherweight championship just 1 month later when he showed zero interest in defending it. His lightweight reign lasted longer until April 2018, when after more than 500 days without fighting, the UFC stripped him and made Khabib Nurmagomedov the undisputed champion. This brings up an important detail about Topuria's track record with giving up titles. When he vacated his featherweight championship in February 2025, Dana White clarified that it was completely Topuria's choice, and not something the UFC demanded.
But this is the most damning part. Don't be surprised if Topuria says goodbye to MMA. I don't think I'll stay in MMA too long. It's no secret I always wanted to go and test my skills in boxing. I wanted to finish my story in MMA first. I'll make my transition to boxing, and I'm going to surprise a lot of people. I mean, we kind of knew this. Topuria's been talking about this forever. He's been saying, I'm taking the Conor McGregor route.
Back in February 2025, Topuria willingly gave up his featherweight belt to chase the lightweight championship. He explained that the extreme weight cuts were his main motivation, describing how walking around at roughly 190 pounds made dropping to 145 increasingly impossible. One expert explained the situation perfectly.
Ilia Topuria is saying that he wants to go into boxing and just completely be done with MMA soon. Yeah, that's a little bit worrying. First of all, Ilia is not going to be a world-level championship boxer. I hate to break it to you. I know I'm an MMA fan, but at the end of the day, boxers are so good at what they do because they master the sweet spot science. They master the sport of boxing. They spend their entire lives just boxing, whereas Ilia boxes, kicks, wrestles, does jiu-jitsu, elbows, knees. There is so much that goes into MMA that you don't have the time to focus on just one martial art.
He captured the vacant lightweight title at UFC 317 on June 28, 2025, destroying Charles Oliveira with a first-round knockout. That win made him the 10th fighter in UFC history to capture championships in 2 different weight classes and the first undefeated fighter to achieve dual champion status. But now, with Topuria stuck on the sidelines indefinitely and an interim title fight approaching, everyone wants to know whether the lightweight champion will ever come back to defend his belt, or if he has bigger ambitions that could pull him away from MMA completely.
He has openly said, I plan to retire between the ages of 30 and 32. I want my first defense to be October or November. It ended up being October. And he wants to retire between the age of 30 and 32. So essentially, he's already 29. He only plans on fighting Paddy if Paddy beats Justin Gaethje. Best case scenario, he fights Paddy in maybe July, I would say. That'd be the best case scenario. So now he's halfway to 30, and he says he wants to retire around 30, 32. Well, does that include boxing?
Now let's tackle the biggest question hanging over everything. What's actually going to happen with Ilia Topuria moving forward, and will we ever watch him compete again? That answer is way more complex than you'd expect because recent interviews and public statements make it crystal clear that Topuria sees his MMA career as temporary. He's been completely open about wanting to switch to professional boxing as soon as possible.
That you'll fight in January. When would you like to fight? When you feel it's time to return? Well, Ilia says, as I've communicated, I'm going through some personal problems. I do not have an exact date when everything will be fixed. I hope that as soon as possible, as soon as it is solved, I will be ready to go back. In the octagon, I prioritize at this time the welfare of my family, of my children, my own. So as soon as everything is solved, I will be back to the octagon to give it the show.
Let me explain what Topuria's long-term strategy seems to involve. After capturing the lightweight title at UFC 317, Topuria immediately started pushing for a super fight against Islam Makhachev, who had recently given up the lightweight belt to compete at welterweight. Topuria presented this potential showdown as a legacy-cementing Triple Crown opportunity, making him the first fighter in UFC history to win championships in 3 separate weight classes. When Makhachev successfully claimed the welterweight title in November 2025 with a convincing decision over Jack Della Maddalena at UFC 322, Topuria intensified his challenges, publicly criticizing the fight as dull and emotionless, while confidently promising he would knock Makhachev unconscious. But alongside these MMA goals, Topuria has repeatedly emphasized his approaching departure from the sport to focus on boxing. In a December 2025 interview with Marca, he clearly stated that his MMA journey wouldn't continue much longer, explaining his belief in not chasing 2 rabbits simultaneously, meaning he plans to completely finish his UFC chapter before committing entirely to boxing. Not everyone thinks this boxing transition will work out well. One expert was brutally honest about the obstacles Topuria would encounter trying to compete at elite professional boxing level.
Actually, I met my wife in Miami.
Really?
Yeah, she was living there.
Damn. Who says you can't meet your wife in Miami?
But you can find your wife in any place in the world.
You hear that? Put that on Only in Date on Instagram. You can meet your wife in Miami.
All right, let's roll.
Put it on Only in Date. It's hilarious.
Everywhere. But why are you saying that?
Huh?
Why are you saying that?
Everyone says that.
Because you go to the party and this is the only...
The consequences of Topuria's boxing dreams are mind-blowing. Topuria has clearly stated he plans to retire between ages 30 and 32. He's currently 28 years old, turning 29 in just a couple weeks. When you calculate the timeline, That suggests we might only see 2 or 3 more fights from Topuria maximum before he leaves the octagon forever. One commentator broke down the harsh reality of this schedule.
I would bet my life the best case scenario for Ilia Topuria would be 2 more fights, maybe 3. I'd be shocked if we got 3 more fights from Ilia Topuria, unless he were to somehow lose, like a fluke injury or something. If he goes out there, if you fight, let's say Paddy beats Justin Gaethje, I'm predicting Paddy to win right now. So hypothetically, Paddy beats Gaethje, Topuria fights Paddy mid-2026, which is already a disgrace that we got to wait over a year for that fight to happen. Who's he going to fight after that? He's not fighting Arman. Dana White has already made that quite clear. It's already a sham belt. We're not fighting the number 1 contender. Then I think he's going to probably try to get the Islam fight. Maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't.
Now let's examine what this means for Tupuria's place in history and the lightweight division's future. As of late November 2025, Topuria held the number 2 position in the UFC men's pound-for-pound rankings, behind only welterweight champion Islam Makhachev. He briefly reached the top spot after his incredible knockout of Oliveira at UFC 317. His legacy as the 10th dual champion, maintaining a flawless 17-0 record with spectacular finishes over Volkanovski, Holloway, and Oliveira, stays elite. But having 0 lightweight title defenses opens him up to paper champion criticism, potentially damaging his reign compared to multiple defense legends. The psychological impact of this situation is enormous too. While Topuria hasn't directly mentioned depression or anxiety, the language in his public statements suggests serious emotional strain. The pressure of protecting his children while fighting what he describes as manufactured stories has obviously impacted his ability to concentrate on fighting. When pressed about his comeback timeline, Topuria emphasized that his family takes priority, and he has no specific date for his return. Finally, Ilia, because the public needs to know, you said not the first quarter.
I'll tell you guys this right now. To quote Dean Thomas, Ilia Topuria is a disaster for the lightweight division. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope something changes.
What's happening deserves our understanding and respect. This situation reminds people of other UFC fighters who've stepped away for personal issues. Sean O'Malley, for example, announced a complete break in September 2024 after losing his title to Marabdevashvili at UFC 306, explaining he needed mental recovery following an exhausting period as bantamweight champion. There's also that Nelk Boys clip that keeps getting brought up when discussing Tupuria's marriage problems. During an interview, Topuria mentioned meeting his wife in Miami, and the Nelk Boys' reaction created an incredibly uncomfortable moment that many now see as predicting future problems. People have pointed to this uncomfortable interaction as proof that red flags about Tupuria's relationship might have been obvious for months and that the current crisis was possibly unavoidable. So what happens next? Tupuria's return timeline stays locked to no fights through Q1 2026, with Q2 beginning in April as the soonest possible comeback, assuming his legal issues get resolved. If delays stretch beyond 12-18 months from his June 2025 last fight, forced title stripping becomes probable, elevating the interim champion to undisputed status and completely reorganizing contender rankings. The brutal truth is that even under the best circumstances, we're looking at an extremely small number of fights left in Tupuria's MMA journey. One expert delivered a devastating evaluation of the situation, and maybe the most crushing assessment came at the conclusion of that same analysis where the expert didn't sugarcoat what Tupuria's absence means for everyone else. The reality is simple. We're watching what might be the start of the final chapter for one of the most gifted fighters who ever entered the octagon. Whether Topuria comes out of these legal wars cleared or not, the damage to his career path cannot be undone. The lightweight division sits frozen in uncertainty, contenders are losing their minds with frustration, and fans are questioning whether they'll ever see the undefeated champion fight again. Topuria wrote in his statement that the truth doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be real. Time will show us what that reality actually looks like, and whether Ilia Topuria will ever step back into the cage to defend the championship he sacrificed everything to win. Thanks for watching. If this breakdown hit the mark for you, check out one of the videos showing on your screen right now for more content just like this.